Good morning. I'm Deirdre Bolton in New York.
And I'm Diane Macedo in London. We have special coverage of the funeral for Queen Elizabeth, but we're also watching other top stories, including calls for a federal investigation after the governors of Texas and Florida sent migrants to liberal strongholds like Martha's Vineyard without warning. President Biden says the governors are playing politics with human beings. The governors say their states are bearing an unfair burden. We have the latest on how the White House is responding. A special master has been appointed in the battle over documents seized at MarALago. What we're learning about the outside arbiter and what it could mean for former President Trump and the Justice Department's criminal investigation. And we have new details about the funeral plans for Queen Elizabeth. How Prince William, Prince Harry, and the Queen's other grandchildren plan to pay their respects over the weekend, as the line of people hoping to see the Queen lying in state is now paused after growing more than 5 miles long.
We do begin, though, with the fight to free WNBA star Brittany Griner and ex-Marine Paul Whelan. Both are behind bars in Russia, sentenced to years in prison. President Biden set to meet with members of their families later today. Our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, has more. Good morning, Martha.
The White House says President Biden is meeting with Griner's wife and Whelan's sister to show that getting the Americans released is still a priority for the president. Griner has been imprisoned in Russia since February. Whelan was arrested at the end of 2018. In July, the Biden administration made an offer to the Russians to exchange a convicted Russian arms dealer, Viktor Bout, for the two Americans, but there's not been significant progress on those negotiations. Meanwhile, former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, with the family's blessings, has been in Moscow on an independent mission to try to free Griner and Whelan. State Department voiced concern about that mission, saying that could hinder those official efforts, but Richardson has had success in the past. Deirdre?
Martha, thank you so much. For more, we bring in ABC News contributor and columnist at USA Today, Christine Brennan, and the acting director of the Wilson Center, Kennan Institute, William Pomerantz. Thank you both for being here. Christine, starting with you, how significant is this meeting between the president and the families of Griner and Whelan?
Deirdre, it's another step in what we have seen in terms of the public campaign to try to free Brittany Griner and, of course, Paul Whelan. This has been moving along, as Martha said, since February when, of course, Brittany Griner was arrested in a Moscow airport. And the fact that we're talking it's still 7 months is extraordinary. Brittany Griner was sentenced to 9 years in prison about 6 weeks ago, and we haven't heard much since then. And so this allows the story to come back and be in the headlines as it is, as we're talking about it now. And it allows everyone to remember, because everyone seems to have short attention spans these days, and just brings it to the forefront. And hopefully, if it's just domestic, which of course we're talking about it in the U.S., hopefully, again, it can put some pressure on Russia, although I don't think there's much hope that anything's going to happen anytime soon. But it's part of a campaign that is begun by Brittany Griner's family, by the WNBA players who've been so good on social issues and looking out for their teammate and their colleague, to continue to keep her name in the headlines, which is a big part of this story.
William, picking up on one of the points that Christine just made, the administration offering to exchange both Griner and Whelan for convicted Russian arms dealer Viktor Bout. Yet to be any progress on that. So do you think that that is still what's in the mix here?
Well, I think from the United States, that's in the mix. I think from the Russian Federation, I don't think that they will make a deal where they send 2 Americans for 1 Russian. So I think that there is a need for another Russian somewhere in the mix of this dialogue if there's going to be a successful prisoner swap. The Russians have proposed other names, some who are outside U.S. jurisdiction. But I don't think that there's going to be real progress until there becomes evident that there's a 2-for-2 deal.
Okay, 2-for-2 deal, even though Viktor Bout is notorious, and the 2 prisoners who are currently in Russia, I guess according to their system, have broken crimes, but it doesn't seem like a fair moral trade, so to speak.
Well, I don't think Vladimir Putin's interested in a fair moral trade. I think he wants to try to get the maximum out of any such deal. And obviously, there's a lot on Vladimir Putin's plate right now, so that he is not focused on the case of Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan, unlike President Biden.
Okay. Christine, I want to pick up on the issue of Griner's family, who has been waiting for an update on the proposal since last speaking with the president in July. You mentioned that. It has been a little bit more than a month since Griner was sentenced. So how are she and her family holding up?
Word is that they are coping. Of course, what else can you do, right? You're a WNBA star, a two-time Olympic gold medalist, represented the United States many times, as Brittany Griner has, and now you're also 6'9", and now you're in this tiny jail cell. It must be excruciating and just awful. And as the WNBA playoffs and finals are going on, you're celebrating these great women athletes, Deirdre, and then, of course, one of the greatest of all time is sitting in a jail cell in Moscow for having had, 0.7 of a gram of hashish oil in her possession. So it's tough. There's no doubt it's tough. But I think that Brittany Griner knows, from the WNBA players, from them wearing her number, all of the signs of support, that she knows that people care and have not forgotten her, obviously. And this just accentuates that. When you're meeting with the President of the United States, it's such a symbolic moment, and that's a positive. Of course, Putin knows that he's got something of value. And in fact, the value goes up every time we talk about Brittany Griner. But obviously, that is a decision the Biden administration has made and her family has made to keep her name in the news, even as obviously she becomes quite a prize for Putin in his, demented brain about an American, a Black woman, happens to be a gay woman, obviously a two-time Olympic gold medalist. Throw that in the mix, and Putin's probably loving the fact that he's got her and can now have these demands to the U.S. government in a way that maybe it wouldn't have happened in February or March.
Okay, Christine, thank you. And William, I just want to bring in the efforts that the Biden administration have been making. I mean, New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson, as our colleague Martha Raddatz just told us, is in Moscow working on their release. He's been involved in multiple successful efforts to free detained Americans in the past. Can he be successful this time?
Well, it's unclear who Governor Richardson is actually meeting with. But I think this is a very long process. I don't think that, unfortunately, Brittany and Paul Whelan will come home with Governor Richardson. I think that the political climate between Russia and the United States is so poisonous that I don't think a deal really is in the mix right now. And indeed, as the other commentator mentioned, Vladimir Putin will want to play this for as much as possible. And in light of that consideration and all the other problems that Vladimir Putin now has, dealing with the war in Ukraine, et cetera, I don't think that this is going to be an immediate solution right now.
William, thank you. Christine, thank you. Glad to have your perspectives on this issue. We move now to the latest on the immigration battle within the U.S. President Biden slamming Republican governors in Texas and Florida, accusing them of playing politics with human beings by sending migrants on buses and planes to states like Massachusetts and Washington, D.C., without warning local officials. Now, California Governor Gavin Newsom calling for a federal investigation as those Republican governors say the administration must deal with the crisis. ABC News senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce has the latest.
President Biden taking on Republican governors, accusing them of using human beings as political pawns.
Republicans are playing politics with human beings, using them as props. What they're doing is simply wrong.
Biden responding as conservative governors send more and more migrants from strained border communities to liberal strongholds, an effort to spotlight immigration 2 months before the midterm elections. Hector Miguel Donere didn't know where he was going.
They said that they were taking us somewhere where there is refuge, a lot of help, especially for the children that were traveling with us.
But when he stepped off the bus in Washington, D.C. yesterday, he was outside one of the city's most famous residences, the vice president's house. One of thousands of undocumented migrants bused to Washington by Texas Republican Governor Greg Abbott. Hours before his bus arrived, 2 private chartered jets from San Antonio made a surprise landing on the wealthy island of Martha's Vineyard, carrying roughly 50 migrants, including several children, sent by Florida's Republican governor and presidential hopeful Ron DeSantis. Local officials say they had no idea they were coming, but DeSantis made sure cameras captured it all.
The minute even a small fraction of what those border towns deal with every day is brought to their front door, they all of a sudden go berserk.
But on the ground, officials say they race to provide help and housing.
The immigrants that arrived here were not met with chaos. They've been met with compassion.
For months, Republican governors have been sending migrants to Democratic states to try and make a political point. New York City receiving nearly 12,000 migrants. Its mayor says the city is nearing its breaking point.
We need help. We have not been ashamed to say that. We need help.
The Republican governors say the administration's process is broken and argue their tactic is giving the rest of the country a much-needed dose of reality. There has been a surge in border crossings, a record 1.8 million apprehensions since October, with about half of those migrants being released in the U.S. Cities like El Paso, Texas, have hit a crisis point. ABC's Maria Villarreal seeing it firsthand.
El Paso is one of the border cities that's getting hit really hard right now. We just confirmed with the city that Border Patrol has about 1,300 encounters every day. And a lot of those people end up right here in the streets, downtown area of El Paso. You can see a lot of people are starting to drop off food and drinks here, as well as clothing for migrants that are waiting to get on buses to then head north.
We pressed the White House.
And do you feel that the situation at the border is under control? Are you doing enough?
We are fixing a broken system. It is not like turning the light switch on. It is going to take some time.
Now, the White House says the Trump administration is largely to blame for that broken system, but they do admit that there's a lot more work that can be done here. But the president is stressing that Republicans have shown no real interest in actually solving the immigration problem through legislation. It's one of the many reasons the president says the upcoming midterm elections are so critical. Deirdre.
Mary Bruce, thank you very much. There are also new developments in the battle over the MarALago documents. Overnight, a federal judge naming a special master in the search and denying the Justice Department's request to use the material in its investigations. ABC News Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas has the report. Hi, Pierre.
Deirdre, good morning. The judge wants a third party, in this case a special master, to help determine what's classified and what's not, and what the former president may be allowed to claim as privilege. She appointed a former federal judge, Raymond Dearie, who has experience in national security matters, to look at the documents and to conclude his work by November 30th. To be blunt, Judge Aileen Cannon, a Trump appointee, is highly skeptical of the government and has denied DOJ's request to resume use of those classified documents in their ongoing investigation for as much as 2 months. Cannon says she's not willing to accept the government's assertions that roughly 100 documents seized from MarALago are classified, even though they're labeled as such, including some designated as secret and top secret. The government has claimed that the judge's order slows and hampers their criminal investigation, which has national defense implications. And DOJ says Trump, as a former president, has no right to classify documents, period. DOJ is expected to seek emergency relief from an appeals court. Deirdre?
Pierre Thomas, thank you very much. Now to the tropical threat on the move. Tropical storm Fiona churning in the Atlantic, taking aim at Puerto Rico and the Caribbean. ABC News Chief Meteorologist Ginger Z has the full forecast. Good morning, Ginger.
Deirdre, we are heating up the Atlantic, so we've got Tropical Storm Fiona, and you'll see that this stays together as a tropical storm as it approaches those Leeward Islands. So that's going to be by tonight. It's not looking too organized, but it'll be fighting through a couple of variables to stay a tropical storm as it passes south of Puerto Rico Saturday night through Sunday morning, and then gets to the Dominican Republic Sunday into Monday. So let's kind of break it down. This morning, you couldn't tell that you had a tropical storm coming, which is how it always goes, right? It's undisturbed. And then by tonight, this picture is going to look very different on the Earth cam. That rain really starts to peak up in Puerto Rico on the southern shores. That's Saturday at 11 p.m. where we stopped it. Now, those rain showers are going to continue in bands all the way through 5 p.m., which becomes an issue. But look at the center of Fiona as it passes over the Dominican Republic. The more land and elevation that it interacts with, the more it will shred that storm. They don't like friction. The rain, though, definitely going to impact Puerto Rico. 6 to 10 inches when you have 2,000 to 4,000 foot peaks. That could cause some flash flooding, some roads closures. We'll watch for that, and even a little on the power outage. Some of the winds could be upwards of 50 plus. Then what happens after it passes, north and east of Cuba over some of those eastern Bahamas? It looks like the spaghetti models are all over the place. They really widen out, but many of the models that we follow take it right there just east of South and North Carolina, and one of them sandwiches it between those two high-pressure systems. Another one allows it to get picked up in that jet stream that you see represented by those arrows. So this is still 10 days out. We have a lot of time to watch this thing, and we'll be all over it. Deirdre.
Ginger, thank you very much, Ginger Z. Coming up, we are live from London with the latest on the security preparations for Monday's funeral of Queen Elizabeth II.
Welcome back. I'm Diane Macedo, live from London, where we're learning new details about funeral plans for Queen Elizabeth. We're told the Queen's grandchildren, including Prince William and Prince Harry, will stand vigil by the Queen's coffin tomorrow night, where we will see Prince Harry wearing his military uniform for the first and only time. Tonight, King Charles and his siblings will stand vigil as the Queen lies in state, with Princess Anne making history as the first woman to ever participate in that tradition. For members of the public hoping to see the Queen's coffin, the line is now paused after growing more than 5 miles long, and the wait time is estimated to be about 14 hours. And now we're hearing there's even a line for the line. It's all leading up to Monday's state funeral here at Westminster Abbey behind me, and ABC's Faith Abube has more on that. Faith, what's the latest on Monday's plans?
Well, we've seen, Diane, over the last few days, the love the people here in the UK have for their late monarch. And Monday is a holiday, so we expect to see even more people in the streets of London to pay their final respect. And then also, we're expecting dignitaries from across the world here. We know Britain has diplomatic ties with a lot of countries across the world, and heads of state from those countries are expected to be here. Security will be especially tight. We know President Biden and First Lady Jill Biden will be here as well. Now, as for what we're actually going to see on Monday, starting at 10:30 a.m. local time here in London, we're expecting to see a gun carriage carry the Queen's coffin from Westminster Hall to Westminster Abbey, where that funeral will be happening. And the scene will be much like what we saw just 2 days ago when that procession happened from Buckingham Palace to Westminster Hall. And so we'll see the Queen's coffin, we will see the military band playing, we will see the royal family behind the coffin. But imagine on a much, much significantly larger scale than what we saw the other day. And it will be a very emotional day as the crowd watches along as this funeral happens, because essentially it will be the last time and that final goodbye before Queen Elizabeth is buried.
Yeah, we saw a few hundred soldiers participate in the procession to Westminster Hall. We're going to see thousands participating in the ceremonies on Monday. As for the King today, Faith, he's in Wales today, but tonight we'll see him and his siblings stand vigil by the Queen as she lies in state. How significant is that moment, and what can we expect to see?
I think, Diane, at the end of the day, this will be the moment, another moment, really, where we just see that this, at the end of the day, this is just a family that's lost a loved one, right? A very human moment when we see the Queen's 4 children standing around her coffin, paying vigil for about 15 minutes this evening. It doesn't get really more human than that. And so this country has watched several moments along this, this journey, this period of mourning where the royal family has been, very stoic, but also showing emotion at times. And so they've been there supporting them every step of the way, wishing them well, sharing their condolences, offering their condolences, and we're expecting to see much of that tonight. But again, at the end of the day, this will be 4 children just saying goodbye to their mother once again.
They are, and then the following day we'll see the Queen's grandchildren doing the same. Again, a reminder of the shared duty that she had to both her family and the state. Faith Abube for us, thank you. Meanwhile, an unprecedented security operation is also underway, as Monday's state funeral is expected to bring crowds of more than 1 million people and leaders, as Faith mentioned, from all over the world. James Longman has the latest.
London prepares for the most complex security operation it has ever faced. The Queen's funeral service, possibly the largest event in its history. Guards rehearsing the procession under the cover of darkness as law enforcement gears up to face down serious challenges.
Terrorists like to attack crowds, and we are about to create possibly the biggest crowd in recent history.
The BBC reporting around 1,500 military personnel will descend on the city, along with hundreds hired from private security firms, joining the thousands of police officers patrolling London each day. Sniffer dogs, extra CCTV and armed officers on rooftops keeping watch. The event expected to draw more than 1 million people to the area surrounding Westminster Abbey.
So look, this event is as big as it gets for a number of reasons. One is obviously the number of VIPs that are attending.
Among the dignitaries and world leaders expected to attend, President Biden and First Lady Dr. Jill Biden, the leaders of Canada and France, members of Europe's other royal families, and also invited China's President Xi Jinping. But notably, left off the list, Russian President Vladimir Putin. With so many in one area, leaders are being asked to park their cars and jump on government buses to the funeral. But a government official has told ABC News those protocols won't apply to President Biden. Beyond the visible show of force, an intense operation underway behind the scenes.
What you also won't see is the scale of technical surveillance that is being undertaken. So our brilliant intelligence services, they're there 24 hours a day trying to keep us safe.
Our thanks to James Longman for that report. And ABC News is bringing you team coverage bright and early Monday morning, covering the funeral for the Queen, of course, and you can start watching right here at 5:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Coming up, mortgage rates are on the rise, hitting their highest level in 14 years. What it means for potential home buyers after this.
Welcome back to ABC News Live. An urgent search for a child is underway after a lightning strike on a Florida lake. Storms picking up as a middle school rowing team of 5 were practicing. The incident sent one child to the hospital and another is still missing. Mortgage rates have now climbed to their highest level since the 2008 housing crash. Freddie Mac reporting that the 30-year rate rose to 6.02% from 5.89% last week, and the long-term rate average has more than doubled from a year ago. Experts saying the Federal Reserve's push to fight inflation by hiking interest rates is cooling the formerly red-hot housing market. And Michael Jordan still setting records. The so-called Last Dance jersey worn by Jordan in the Game 1 of the 1998 NBA Finals, selling for nearly $10.1 million, the most ever for an item of sports memorabilia. Jordan and the Bulls beat Utah in that series, Jordan's 6th and final NBA championship. I'm Deirdre Bolton. Stay with us. ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis.
¡Viva México! ¡Viva!
Hi everyone, George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.